In today's video, I am bringing you the biggest buys right now in Dynasty fantasy football players I believe to be undervalued that you should be acquiring on your Dynasty rosters. As with the sells video from last week, I am using Keep Trade Cut as well as the expert average rankings on the flockfantasy.com site to gauge where players are currently being valued on the market. Not every deal that I propose in today's video will be able to get done in every single league. Every league is different, and more importantly, every manager is different. The examples I give will be good baselines for deals that you could potentially get done based on where the market consensus currently sits on these names. If you are looking for some more Dynasty fantasy football content this offseason, maybe some long form content, I am doing a Dynasty fantasy football podcast. It is called the Dynasty Arsenal. We are covering all things Dynasty offseason. This upcoming Wednesday, we will have an episode coming out where we go over a Dynasty startup mock that we conducted. For anyone with a Dynasty startup that is set to start soon, or if you're currently in one, that is a great podcast for you to listen to get our thoughts on where players are currently being valued. Link will be in the description for that, and without further ado, let's get into the first buy. With each of these names, I will give the positional rank for these players, for myself, for the expert average, as well as Keep Trade Cut, but I'll also say where they are valued overall in Dynasty Fantasy Football to sort of get an idea of where they would go in a startup currently. Jackson Dart is the first buy of the video. He is my quarterback 7, overall rank of 16, so an early to mid second round pick in a startup for myself. He is the expert quarterback 10, overall rank of 28, so an early to mid third round pick. And he is the Keep Trade Cut quarterback 10 as well, overall 28, same as the expert consensus, so an early to mid third round pick for that as well. Jackson Dart started for the first time in week 4, and he played in all but 2 games going forward because of the concussion he sustained against the Bears in week 10. In those 12 games played, he averaged 23 points per game in a 6-point per passing touchdown scoring format. The flash up on the screen here is going to be 4-point scoring, but 6-point is probably more standard, so I'm going with that for my analysis here. This includes his 1-point outing against the Vikings, which obviously needs to be included because he played in it and he only threw for 33 yards and it was a terrible game, but also it's a rookie quarterback against a Brian Flores defense. Imagine he just has a mediocre game there, and that point per game number is probably closer to 25. Either way, his 23 points per game would put him at 7th in that points per game number on the season, only behind Stafford, Purdy, Josh Allen, Drake May, Patrick Mahomes, and Trevor Lawrence. He's ahead of Dak, Caleb, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, all guys who had very good seasons. Going back a little bit, I was not a huge fan of Dart coming into the NFL. The Ole Miss offense was a little gimmicky. He relied a lot on his athleticism as opposed to having to read a defense at the college level. Then he's drafted at the end of the first round, where the only hit in like the last decade is Lamar Jackson. Everybody else, it's bust after bust. But Jackson Dart comes in and he adapted very well, and he adapted immediately. And the biggest draw with Dart for fantasy football purposes is the rushing upside. He's averaging 7 rush attempts and 40 yards on the ground, as well as just under 1 rushing touchdown per game in his starts this year. The only quarterback to average more rushing yards per game in 2025 was Justin Fields. Dart's rushing floor alone puts him in the conversation for a quarterback 1 finish every season going forward that he's a starter. Now, with John Harbaugh coming in, seems like he's bringing Todd Monken with him to be the offensive coordinator. Those two have proved they are able to maximize an elite rushing threat, and I would expect them to do the exact same with Jackson Dart. The stability of this coaching staff also gives me so much confidence that Dart will continue to improve as a quarterback and will be this team's starter for a very long time. If you are worried about the Dart play style and the concussion that he sustained this year and the amount of times that he had to be in the protocol and go in the blue medical tent, I would caution you to miss out on some great value here because of the potential he gets hurt, a potential which exists for every player in the NFL. If you are completely out on Dart, I hope that you didn't like Lamar in 2023 when he was coming off back-to-back 12-game seasons. I hope you're not a huge fan of Puka, who's missed 8 games over the past 2 years. I hope you don't like Burrow or Nico Collins or Chris Olave, who just had a huge year after concussion concerns. Every player is capable of getting injured, obviously, and I am positive that Harbaugh and Monken will rein Dart in, not in a sense that his rushing production decreases, but that he makes smart decisions while on the move, while running the football, that prevent his career from being shortened. Now, as for these deals that I'm going to propose, quarterbacks are always difficult pieces to discuss trades for, especially in superflex leagues, because there aren't enough to go around and people don't normally want to give one up without getting one back. So the trades here that I'll discuss will all be how I would value Dart compared to the other quarterbacks and who I would trade him for at that position. Some tier downs that I like to acquire Jackson Dart. The first being Caleb Williams. I really like Caleb Williams. I like his potential going forward, but I prefer Dart. You can maximize on all the playoff hype that Caleb is getting right now. The market value suggests that the plus on top of Dart could be a late first. If you're sending Caleb away, that's a no-brainer. To me, an early second would be enough for me to get that done as well. Mahomes for Dart plus. Any plus at all here on top of Dart, sending away Patrick Mahomes, I would view as a huge win. Some straight swaps, some guys that are valued very close to Dart, where I prefer Dart over them. Justin Herbert, Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy. If you have to add any late second, even a mid-second onto any of these names to go get Jackson Dart, I really like that move. And then some tier ups for Jackson Dart. This entire mid tier of quarterback, guys like Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud. Current market value suggests that a late first paired with any of those names that I mentioned could get you Jackson Dart. I like that a lot. I do those deals in a heartbeat, especially this year where at first glance, looking at the rookie class, it appears that these late firsts won't be as valuable as they have been in past years. I'm going to do an entire video coming up here soon in the next couple of weeks dedicated to what you can buy and sell your 2026 rookie picks for Jackson Dart purposes. If you have two firsts onwards from the 106, I would send both of those paired together to go get a name like Jackson Dart. Mac Jones is going to be the second buy of the video. He is my quarterback 24, an overall rank of 97, so around a 9th round pick in a startup. The expert consensus and Keep Trade Cup both have him as a 15th round pick. The expert consensus as QB 33 and Keep Trade Cut at 29. Mac Jones played incredibly well in this 49ers offense in Brock Purdy's absence in 2025. In the 8 games that he started, he averaged 20 points per game in a 6-point per passing touchdown format. He's throwing for an average of 270 yards with a close to 70% completion percentage. If you'll recall, he looked great for the Jags down the stretch in 2024 when Trevor Lawrence got hurt. He's the one who facilitated the huge Brian Thomas Jr. breakout. Now, the 49ers are very smart, and they gave Mac Jones a 2-year deal last offseason to come and be their backup quarterback, and that means that if a team wants him this offseason, they are going to need to send some draft capital. There are 8 teams, in my eyes, this offseason who need to figure out their quarterback situation. Arizona, Cleveland, Indianapolis, they probably re-sign Daniel Jones, you would imagine. The Las Vegas Raiders, who will likely draft Fernando Mendoza. Miami, Minnesota. JJ McCarthy is there, but there is no way that he doesn't have to win a camp battle to get the starting job. The New York Jets, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we are left with 6 teams if we don't include Indy and Las Vegas. And these are the names available. You have Ty Simpson as a potential late first-round pick in the draft. Kyler Murray, Tua, Justin Fields, Marcus Mariota, Russell Wilson, Malik Willis, Joe Flacco, Geno Smith, and Mac Jones. Looking at the options outside of Mac Jones, I would bet plenty of teams would rather send a day 2 pick for Mac Jones instead of paying one of those other guys. I do think he will need a good, stable offensive situation for him to succeed. I think a lot of comparisons will be made to Darnold in terms of his process of becoming a starter in the NFL, and I think those comparisons are very fair. He also backed up Brock Purdy for a year before he signed in Minnesota. I also do think we don't need some elite top-of-the-line play caller for him to succeed. Doug Peterson was able to get a lot out of Mac Jones at the end of 2024, and he's not one of these Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell level guys. Clint Kubiak for the Seahawks just kind of came out of nowhere, and he's made Darnold look very, very good. I do think Minnesota would be an absolute perfect fit for Mac Jones. It would likely mean that they have little to no belief in JJ McCarthy if they were to send, say, a 2nd or a 3rd round pick for Mac Jones. But you have Pittsburgh, Miami, Cleveland, Arizona, all bringing in new head coaches, new offensive coordinators, and could be situations that would appeal heavily for Mac Jones. Wherever all of those chips land, I think there is a greater than 90% chance Mac Jones is a starter week 1 in 2026. And because of that fact alone, his value will rise way higher than the current consensus has him. I want to try and capitalize right now before the free agency talk starts and it becomes mainstream that he's going to have a starting job. Starting with some tear downs, Sam Darnold. Any late first this year or any future first in any year going forward would be a smash for me as a plus with Mac Jones to give away Sam Darnold. I obviously believe Mac will be a starter, and when he is, I think these guys will provide near identical production in 2026, and you can get a first on top. Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy. Market value indicates you could get an early to mid second for down tiering from one of these guys to Mac Jones. I genuinely think it's more likely Mac is starting week 1 than either of these two. And that in and of itself will create a natural selling window if you want to potentially flip Mac for a profit. Some straight swaps that are valued near Mac Jones currently. Geno Smith, I would so easily take Mac Jones. Malik Willis is another guy who could potentially get a starting job this offseason. I think his production and his ability as a quarterback is a lot more scheme dependent, and the Green Bay backup situation makes him look very good, where I think Mac Jones fits into more systems better potentially. Justin Fields, if you can get that done. Anthony Richardson, if anybody still believes there. Move some late picks around in these deals to make it work. I'm fine sending a 3rd round pick with any of these guys to get Mac Jones. Now, tier ups don't really make sense for Mac Jones because he's kind of like the bottom of the barrel in terms of quarterback value. But in terms of picks, I would send any 2nd round pick, the 206 or later, right now for Mac Jones. Chase Brown is the next buy. I mentioned in my running back rankings that Chase Brown is someone I feel that I'll be higher than consensus on all offseason. And when prepping for this video, he is a glaring value to me. He is my running back 10, overall rank of 39, so a early 4th round pick in my eyes in a startup. He is the expert running back 16, overall rank of 65, a mid 6th round pick. And Keep Trade Cut has him at the 5-6 turn and running back 13 overall. That startup mock that I mentioned for my Dynasty podcast, I was able to grab Chase Brown all the way down at the 609. So this market value checks out. I'll use here the same 24 game sample that I talked about in the running back rankings video, the games in 2024 after he took over the backfield, which was in week 9, and then the non-Jake Browning games in 2025. So we're throwing out all the games where this offense as a whole was completely inept. Now, the reason I like this sample is because I believe it represents what we should expect from Chase Brown in 2026 for the Bengals. In that 24 game sample size, he averages 19 points per game, a mark that only 5 running backs eclipsed this season. Not much should change in this situation going into 2026. It's the exact same coaching staff and supporting cast. The defense may improve slightly with free agency and the draft, but Trey Hendrickson is a free agent, and him leaving means it only gets worse. And all of that means that we are likely to have the Bengals as a high-scoring, high-passing volume offense in 2026. Running back value in Dynasty, because careers and primes are so short, is very much tied to one-year outlooks on production. Look at Saquon Barkley last offseason and Jonathan Taylor this offseason. Saquon had an insane year in 2024. He's 28 last offseason, and yet he's the Dynasty running back 4. Jonathan Taylor has an insane 2025. He's currently 27 years old, and he's the Dynasty running back 6. I expect a massive year from Chase Brown in 2026, and even with the uncertainty surrounding his talent or his future with the Bengals, a big year in 2026 will increase his value. Speaking of Jonathan Taylor, I think he's a great tier down option. Market suggests you can get a late first or an early second on top of Chase Brown. I would also take any future first in any year that I could get. James Cook is another one. I really like James Cook. I think he's a good value, but the only thing he has over Chase Brown is the contract, and he's priced way higher. If you can get the same pluses with Taylor, any future first, I love that trade. If you have one of these underwhelming wide receivers, I would trade any of them for Chase Brown plus an early 2nd round pick. Garrett Wilson, Rome Odunze, Lad McConkey. Those are deals you should be able to get done. Some straight swaps. Christian McCaffrey, who I think is a perfect hold for contenders right now. But if you have a build where a Christian McCaffrey full season injury, like we've seen from him several times, would send you into a complete hole in terms of contending, I would absolutely swap him for Chase Brown. Saquon Barkley is another one you should be able to swap for Chase Brown. Josh Jacobs, you can move the late second round picks, early third round picks around to get these swaps done. But I really like those moves. RJ Harvey is another one. He was a sell for me last week. I would do cartwheels if I could move him for Chase Brown. And the market value says that you can get that done. Some wide receivers that I would take Chase Brown over. So if you have to add a little plus onto any of these guys to get Chase Brown, I would really like that. Marvin Harrison Jr., AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. And then some tier ups. I would throw any second round pick onto Kenneth Walker or Javonte Williams to try and get Chase Brown. I would throw a late first onto these vet wide receivers like DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, Jacoby Myers to get Chase Brown. Cam Skattebo is the next name of the buy video. He is my running back 13, overall rank of 44, so I view him as a late fourth round pick. The expert consensus has him as running back 18 and Keep Trade cut at 16, and they both have him in the 6th round of a startup draft. To me, it seems the main concern with Skattebo on the market right now is the injury, and that's why he's being pushed down. Maybe it's that combined with the later draft capital and thus the smaller team investment. That's the only reason I can see him being pushed down this far. When another rookie running back, who also had a very similar season-ending injury in Quinshon Judkins, is not receiving anywhere near the same injury tax. The injury dip for Skattebo has gone way too far. This was obviously a brutal injury. We all saw it, but we're already 3 months removed, and all the word from the Twitter doctors is that he should be ready for OTAs and good to go week 1. Now, these injuries are obviously complicated and things could change, but there isn't anything else not to like, in my opinion, about Skattebo's long-term outlook. I have said, specifically with Woody Marks, that teams are not attached to players they select on day 3 of the draft, the same way they are with second or third round picks. And this remains true. It's also always a worry with a new coaching staff coming in and wanting to have their guys in the building. The Giants just hired John Harbaugh and Todd Monken. But the Giants have 2 rookie running backs in Tyrone Tracy and Cam Skattebo with 2 and 3 years left on their rookie deals respectively, who have performed way above their draft selection thus far in each of their careers. Devin Singletary also has a year left on his deal. John Harbaugh is coming into a situation where there is no need for him to even think about the running back position this offseason, and if the Twitter docs are correct and Skattebo is playing meaningful snaps through the early part of the 2026 season, I believe he's going to have the majority share of this backfield. And at some point in the season, understanding that he's still recovering from the injury, I think he'll do great things with it. And that will vault him right back up to his pre-injured value. So I love taking advantage of the massive dip that we're seeing on the market right now. Some tier downs for Cam Skattebo. Quinshon Judkins. I like Quinshon Judkins, but if you're swapping an injured guy for an injured guy and you get to net a ton of value, why wouldn't you do that? Christian McCaffrey, like I mentioned with Chase Brown, his value's at a high point right now, and I think that's justifiable. But if your roster looks like it might not have the juice in 2026, getting out of Christian McCaffrey for a younger asset with a plus on top is a great move. If I can get a second round pick with Cam Skattebo for either of these guys, I love that. Breece Hall is another one. He's a boomer bust asset this offseason, and it's completely dependent on where he lands in free agency. To me, it seems like he's already being valued as if he's landing as the clear lead back in a good offense. There's no guarantee the Jets let him walk. A lot can change in a few months from all the chatter of he's definitely going to leave from during the season. If he does walk, there's no guarantee he lands in a good spot. There are plenty of bad offenses who pay running backs. If I can get a second with Cam Skattebo for Breece Hall, I love that deal. Skattebo is valued very close to Chase Brown, so I'd take the same tier downs involving those underwhelming wide receivers I mentioned: Garrett Wilson, Lad McConkey, Rome Odunze. Straight swaps for Cam, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, RJ Harvey. If you can net any sort of plus here, that's great. If not, I would take Skattebo straight up over these guys and give me Scat over the same vet wide receivers that I mentioned for Chase Brown: AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. I would take Cam Skattebo straight up over Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. I think the tier ups are the exact same for Chase Brown as well. Those young free agent running backs, Kenneth Walker and Javonte Williams, I would throw a second round pick onto either of these guys to get Cam Skattebo, and same with the vet wide receivers: DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, Jacoby Myers, a late first onto any of these guys to get Cam Skattebo. Love those moves. My first wide receiver buy of the video is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. He is my wide receiver 12, overall rank of 37. I view him as an early 4th round pick. The expert consensus has him as wide receiver 18, a mid 4th round pick at overall rank of 42, and Keep Trade cut a little lower on him, wide receiver 19, and an early 5th round pick for them. I grabbed Brian Thomas Jr. at the 504 in the startup mock I did for my Dynasty podcast. So this market value completely checks out. The reason I like Brian Thomas Jr. so much is because rookies who put up 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns don't just disappear. And I refuse to believe that the truth for Brian Thomas Jr. is anything close to what he showed in 2025. 2025 was weird for BTJ for a lot of reasons. You have a new head coach and scheme coming in, a whole new group of pass catchers with Travis Hunter getting drafted and Jakobi Meyers coming over at the deadline, and his target share only dropped 5%. It was the catchable target rate as well as the drops, which contributed most to his lack of production. In 2024, he had a 71% catchable target rate and a 5% drop rate. In 2025, that drop rate jumped to 11%, and his catchable target rate falls to 65. Now, this to me seems like a quarterback and a wide receiver adjusting to a change in the offense. He also dealt with an injury this year, which could have contributed to the issues as well, especially down the stretch when Trevor Lawrence got really hot. My main point in my wide receiver rankings video, justifying my Brian Thomas ranking, was that I believe one of two things will happen. Either Liam Cohen figures out how to maximize his star first-round pick wide receiver who put up 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns as a rookie and wants him producing tied to the $50 million quarterback in this win-now window that the Jags are in because of that contract. Any offensive mind would rather design their offense around a supreme talent like BTJ as opposed to Jakobi Meyers, who's just going to move the chains. The other option is that the Jaguars trade him, because if Cohen thinks that this just isn't a good fit, which I think is a possibility, and they have Jakobi Meyers, Parker Washington, and Travis Hunter returning from injury, what they could get in a trade for Brian Thomas Jr. to use on another part of this roster is a hell of a lot more valuable than having him be the wide receiver 3 or 4 on this offense. There are 4 rookie wide receivers who have put up 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns since 1962. Randy Moss, Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase, and Brian Thomas. Now, maybe that's a high roll on touchdowns. If we reduce that to 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns, you add Anquan Bolden, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, and Malik Neighbors to the list. Brian Thomas would have to be the outlier of all outliers to not be an elite wide receiver in the NFL going forward. Some tear downs for Brian Thomas Jr. First being Teteroa McMillan. He was in my Cells video. He had a good rookie year, but Brian Thomas Jr.'s was better, and I have more faith in the passing offense in Jacksonville or elsewhere if BTJ gets traded than I do in Carolina. Market value says you should be able to net a late first or an early second in this move. I love that. Garrett Wilson, if I can get any late second round pick by going from Garrett Wilson to Brian Thomas Jr., I'm doing that easily. Justin Jefferson, another guy in my Cells video, if you can get a mid first or a similar valued player to a mid first, to go from a guy in Justin Jefferson who had a bad year in 2025 to a guy in Brian Thomas who had a bad year in 2025 when they were valued very similarly a year ago, I love that move as well. Some straight swaps, I would take BTJ over all of the following who are currently valued ahead of him by the consensus. Chris Olave, Emeka Egbuka, Lad McConkey, Rome Odunze. And then some tier ups, starting with Marvin Harrison Jr. This might not take very much at all, but Marv had as disappointing a season as BTJ, except he was also bad as a rookie when BTJ was great. I would add a second onto Marv to get up to BTJ. Zay Flowers is another one. I think Zay provides a nice floor for your roster, and he's coming off a wide receiver 7 finish in total points. Makes him very desirable, but I don't think he'll ever break into the consistent wide receiver 1 in points per game territory, and so I would add a second onto him as well to get up to Brian Thomas Jr., whose ceiling is just much higher, in my opinion. Jameson Williams is going to be the next buy for me. He is my wide receiver 18, overall rank of 47, so I have him as a late 4th round pick in a startup. The extra consensus has him about a round later at wide receiver 24, and then keep trade cut around the same spot in a startup and the wide receiver 22. Now, the biggest thing with JMO is that you need to know what you are acquiring when you trade for him. He has more boom bust nature to him than a lot of other wide receivers. My biggest argument with JMO is that I believe his second half of 2025, where he averaged 16 points per game and only had 2 games out of the last 10 with less than 12 PPR points, is a lot more indicative of what we will see going forward than the first half, where he averaged 8 points a game and only had 2 usable weeks. During the bye in week 8, Dan Campbell made a point to start getting Jameson Williams more involved in the offense. He doesn't need to be a big play or nothing type of wide receiver, and he showed that in the back half of the year. Now, some people will point to the Laporta injury after week 10, saying Jamo's big stretch of production coincides directly with Laporta missing time. And I do think that it's a fair way to look at this, but reading between the lines, the coaching staff verbally expressing their desire to get Jamo more involved and then immediately doing so for 2 weeks out of the bye before Laporta went down tells me that his injury is not the driving factor here. And if we're going to operate as if it's Jamo or Laporta as the number 3 option in the offense behind Amon-Ra and Gibbs, and that the 4th option won't be as involved, I'm taking Jamo all day. I actually made a trade involving Jameson Williams last week. In one of my leagues, I sent a package of Trey Benson, Christian Watson, Kyle Williams, and a late second for Jameson Williams and 2 mid seconds. I see Benson as a bit of a volatile asset this offseason. This will be year 3 we're going into, and he has nothing to show for it yet. There's a new coaching staff. Christian Watson is now 27 years old. Not sure if he'll be consistently giving you those boom games going forward. And Kyle Williams showed next to nothing as a rookie. I'm much happier getting what I believe is a stable asset with tremendous upside in Jameson Williams. Some market tear downs for Jamo. Now, it's hard not to repeat myself on names that I'd sell for these players, so here are a bunch of guys I value close to Jamo who are valued by the consensus way ahead of him. Garrett Wilson, Amike Egbuka, Chris Olave, Roma Dunze, Lad McConkey. I'd be very happy with a market value plus with Jamo for any of these names. You're probably looking at a 2nd round pick. Straight swaps, I would take Jamo over all of these guys straight up. Zay Flowers, Marvin Harrison, Jalen Waddle, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. If you're looking for a positional pivot, I'd take Jamo over the vet running backs that we've talked about, CMC, Jacobs, and Saquon. Some tier ups for Jameson Williams. If you can add any 2nd round pick to Xavier Worthy or Quinton Johnston, similar nature assets in the boom bust range, I'm miles more confident on Jamo going forward. If you can get that done, I love those deals. DJ Moore up next. He is my wide receiver 33. I have him overall 86, so an early 8th round pick. The expert consensus has him at wide receiver 40, and a late 8th round pick in a startup, and keep trade cut all the way down at wide receiver 46 and a 10th round startup pick. And that 10th round value holds up. DJ Moore is essentially free in leagues right now. I took him in the 10th round in that startup mock. He was wide receiver 39 off the board. And he is a great example of a low risk bet that I like taking a shot on at this point in the offseason where so much of his future is uncertain, but all the market thinks about is what just happened in 2025. This year was clearly the changing of the guard in Chicago. Ben Johnson coming in, he immediately drafts 2 offensive weapons, and the ball just didn't go DJ Moore's way. The Bears actually don't lose any money in 2026 if they designate DJ Moore as a post-June 1st cut, or he could be traded, similar to what we saw with Debo a year ago. Ben Johnson didn't choose to have DJ Moore in this offense. He was given to him, and it wasn't the right fit, but that does not tell me by any means that it's over for him. This take is definitely contingent on him getting moved. I don't see his production improving if he stays in Chicago, but any team that does move for him would have a vision for what he can be in their offense. And it's very similar to the Debo situation last year where Cliff Kingsbury really wanted him. Debo was dirt cheap in Dynasty, and he gave you a lot of usable weeks in 2025, and it would have been a lot more if Daniels had not gotten hurt. DJ Moore will be 29 for this upcoming season, and I think he could have 2 years left of production. And in the right situation, plenty of fantasy relevance as a wide receiver 3 flex option. These are the exact type of assets that nobody wants during the offseason because they're old and unattractive, but then they get moved for good draft capital during the year because that's when points are king. DJ Moore is valued right now around a late 2nd round pick. I might wait for these rookie picks to gain a little more value as we move into the draft season. I could see early 3rds getting moved for him once we're on the clock with those picks. But right now, any 210, 211, 212, I'd be happy to send away to add DJ Moore to a contending roster. Terry McLaurin and Cortland Sutton have both already hit 30. I'd rather have DJ Moore over both of those guys. And then there's baked in upside here because if he moves teams, which I believe to be likely, his situation no doubt becomes better wherever he goes versus what it is in Chicago. And so his value increases. The last name of the video is an exciting one. It is Colston Loveland. He is my tight end 3. He's also the tight end 3 on the expert consensus, and he is the tight end 4 on Keep Trade Cut. But it is the overall rank that has me much higher than the consensus on Colston Loveland. I have him ranked as my 28th overall player. The expert consensus has him at 44 and Keep Trade Cut at 48. So I see him as an early to mid third round pick. The expert consensus and Keep Trade Cut have him in the 4th round. In the startup mock that I did, I was able to grab Loveland at the 409, so this market value checks out, at least in terms of startup value. Now, trading value is sometimes more difficult, and you might have somebody who drafted Loveland in their rookie draft. They're super happy with the value they got him for, probably at the back of the 1st round, maybe even in the early 2nd. And we're sort of in the middle of the breakout right now with him having the huge playoff game, and so it may be hard to pry him away. But I value Loveland in a range that I do believe owners would sell him at. The Loveland profile is very simple to me. He dominated in college outside of the year where Michigan had the worst quarterback play in the country. He was a top 10 pick in the NFL draft into a situation with the league's hottest young play caller quarterback combo. And he just showed on the biggest stage in the NFL playoffs that he can be this team's #1 option. I think that Rome Odunze and Luther Burden are both very talented. But did either of them do anything in this game against one of the league's worst cornerback rooms with the Packers? No, it was Colston Loveland. Just watching that game, this guy is absolutely unguardable. He's a complete nightmare matchup for opposing defenses to deal with. He's way too shifty and athletic for any linebacker to cover him, and then if you put a corner on him, he's just too big and strong for them. I believe so strongly in this Bears offense that they are going to be a perennial top 8 offense in the league, and Colston Loveland was the very first choice Ben Johnson made to add to it. One game is obviously not everything, and Loveland did not have a phenomenal rookie year. But I want you to remember that he was injured in camp, and it wasn't even certain that he would play week 1. And I am believing everything I hear about this Ben Johnson offense being difficult to learn, because the entire trajectory of the team in 2025 shows that. So with that context, the back half of the year for Loveland plus the playoff game does matter a lot, especially when it is what we expected from him coming into the league. So now that he's shown it, I am believing that this is what we should expect going forward. And he's still 21 years old. Weeks 9 through 18, he averaged 14 PPR points per game, was the tight end 4 over that span. There's not many tier down options for Colston Loveland, but I think Trey McBride is a good one. He's at a very high value point right now, especially on Keep Trade Cut, where he's valued as a top 10 overall player in Dynasty. That's insane to me. And I'm not sure that you would find a Loveland owner who views Trey McBride that highly. But if I can net an early to mid 1st round pick to down tier from Trey McBride to Colston Loveland, I would absolutely do that. Trey McBride obviously had an incredible year, was the tight end 1 by an absolute mile, but Jacoby Brissett was also on pace for 700 pass attempts in 2025. That is not something we're going to see going forward. I personally think it's very realistic to say that Loveland and McBride could finish very close in points per game next year, and Loveland is over 4 years younger and tied to an astronomically better situation. Some straight swaps, I would quite easily take Loveland over Warren right now, and consensus all season has been the opposite. I know for a fact that it hasn't changed for everyone, because my podcast co-host, a very sharp Dynasty manager, still views Warren as the better asset. I'd personally swap them straight up. I'd rather have Loveland. I would rather be tied to the offense that projects better going forward. Whatever late 2nd or later picks need to be thrown in on either side to get it done, I would do it. I just want Loveland at the end of the day. And I think Harold Fannin is a great up tier. Can I try to get the Loveland manager to buy into the hype of another rookie? I really like Harold Fannin, but he plays for the Browns, and Colston Loveland doesn't. Market value says that a 2nd round pick with Harold Fannin could get you Colston Loveland. I would add a late 1st onto Fannin to get Loveland. I really do think we have a potential tight end 1 in Dynasty after 2026 here. So those are the 8 names I believe to be the best values on the Dynasty fantasy football market right now. Let me know in the comments if you disagree with any of those takes, or if you think there are any names that I missed. I'd love to converse with you in the comments. And like I said, if you're looking for more Dynasty content, make sure to check out my Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast. It will be linked in the description. Hit the like if you like this video, hit the subscribe if you really liked it, and I will catch you all in the next one.